Okay, thank you for being here and for sharing with us day 4 of the sort of the keys to self-mastery. I don't actually have that written down anyway, so I've got to remember to say that, which is really interesting. So, and I'm just going to switch this screen so we can focus on the content that we're doing. So we have Marianne here. Thank you for joining me. And anyone else who joins us live later on, or as the recording. So welcome to the call, and make sure you get your pens and paper out and we'll get into this really cool content. In day 4, what we're talking about is our unconscious behaviours, which are caused by subconscious ego. Now, subconscious, as we know, we have no idea what's going on in our subconscious, and the subconscious and the unconscious is actually kind of similar. So subconscious is actually the part of the brain that holds on to everything. And Mary and I were just talking about that earlier. You know, that is such a part of the ego where it wants to hold on to everything that's happened in your life so that if it happens again, you'll be safe. And that's its reason for holding on to everything that has happened in your life as a recording in your mind. The thing is that what the ego doesn't actually recognize or realize is that because you have those thoughts in your head and in the subconscious, which is reminding you that this happened, that happened, remember, you know, be safe, watch out, all that sort of thing, it actually changes your behavior and you start to behave differently and from a place of fear, which then from those places, and especially energetically what's going on within you, will actually, you'll start to see in the external world. So if you're having all these thoughts and feelings about the past, which the ego thinks is really cool, the thing is that you're carrying your past with you. And that's what we're talking about today, is our unconscious mind or our subconscious mind, which is carrying everything with us and not only keeping you in the past, but it's also creating the past in the current moment and also in the future. So if you ever want to make a change or have a change in your life and think that, again, if you have to do something, you have to do something different to create a change. Well, in actual fact, you just have to think something differently or know something differently rather than doing, because you will naturally do something different when you think different. So actually, if I say don't think at all, just know from what you know. So this is what the unconscious behaviors pretty much are, is just the subconscious ego that you don't know about. As you go deeper into this work, and those who continue to do this work with me afterwards will know, is that there is always lots of stories and lots of thoughts and processes going on in the background which you have no idea exist. So what we're talking about today is how you can find out how to know what they are, how to know what you're actually creating and start to be more and more aware. So most of our unconscious behaviours, I've found, have been driven by our need for safety, protection and survival, which in actual fact is the subconscious egoic mind. So as you know, that's exactly the ego's job, is to keep us safe, protected and make sure that we survive. So there's a lot of stories and a lot of thoughts going on in our heads that you don't even know about, which are based around that, which is why some people go, I don't know why I'm having an anxiety attack. I don't know why I'm worried all the time. It's the subconscious stories and thoughts that it thinks is trying to keep you alive, but in actual fact is driving you bonkers. So we pretty much go day in, day out, not really being aware of what we're doing half the time. Think about it, when we're driving somewhere, you can kind of just drive on autopilot. You kind of just do a lot of things on autopilot without actually knowing what you're doing. And what we're doing now is we want to look at some common daily occurrences that we experience, or most people experience in their lives, that they may not understand that it's actually a choice from the egoic mind, that we can actually use the awareness of the fact that it's the ego creating those experiences or that behavior and help us to deal with them in a different way. It's not getting rid of them. We need to deal with them in a different way, like what we're doing with the ego work. So I'm just going to share with you a few of these common daily occurrences. I'll just ramble them off. Again, if you want to write down a couple that stand out, or even a couple that might come to mind when I'm talking. I'm sure most, if not all of us, may have a lot of these behaviours that we either are aware of or we're not aware of. So fighting or arguing is the first one, definitely from the subconscious egoic mind. When we get offended or triggered or don't know why something, and we go into that panic of, I don't know why. Even being quiet or holding back or reserved is still the egoic mind, the subconscious egoic mind. Procrastination is a perfect one, where your behavior is you don't actually continue on doing what you're wanting to do from a place of the story that the ego is creating in your mind to tell you that it's maybe not safe to do that thing. Maybe because you might be overworked, or you might get overwhelmed with the work that you've got to do. Again, it's all the processes that the ego creates. Now, eating and food is a massive subconscious, or massively subconsciously driven. And you've got overeating, you've got cravings, you've got not eating, and you've got all these different thoughts and awarenesses around food, which we carry with us, which creates, again, the illusions of the body. Like even our illusions of our body is subconscious, and how we see ourselves. You know, sometimes some people go, oh, I look fat, or I don't look good, and everyone else is going, they can't see what that person can see. It's actually subconscious. That person cannot see anything different to what the subconscious is creating. So even the awareness of we might call it body dysmorphia, really, at the end of the day, when you look at yourself in the mirror and you have a perception of that's not right, that's not right, that's all right, that's still the ego. That's the ego and the subconscious ego creating the story about what that looks like. And when you realize that the subconscious is creating that story, again, from a place of protection, you can then, what happens is the way you start to see your body will start to change. The way you start seeing yourself will start to change. So it's really, really interesting. And as you can see, these are all other massive topics that we can delve into at a later date, but I'm just going to touch the surface of all these and bring these into awareness for you. So if you get angry or annoyed for no reason, subconscious ego, frustration, saying things to the kids or to your partner or anyone that you would never, ever dream of saying, those blurting outs, that subconscious ego. Now, definitely this is a big one, is addictions: drinking, smoking, drugs, food, shopping, anything that is a behavior that we do without being aware of it. Or if they actually become habits. So even habits that we have are all subconscious ego. All of them are designed to keep us safe. Doesn't make sense, does it? Then we've got anything that, like most things that we have around money, like how we spend, how we save, whether we're Scrooges, whether we, splurge, like all these different concepts about the way we spend money, the way we think about money, the way we use money, because in actual fact, money is just a piece of paper. And it's us, it's this subconscious ego that creates the stories around the money, again, to keep us safe. Might have those eyes as emojis. Yeah. Okay. Self-sabotage. People go, why do I keep self-sabotaging myself? Subconscious ego. Lying, even if you don't know you're lying, or even if you're actively lying, that's the ego, again, protecting you from something. Or not even being truthful. So again, so often you'll actually notice that you're not being truthful about something, but also how you speak to yourself and not being truthful to yourself, and hiding within yourself. That is still also the ego, who is actually having a conversation with you about yourself. Pretending or trying to be someone, again, those thoughts of trying to be someone, or I have to look about, or I'm not happy with how I look, or I'm not happy with how I am, and trying to be someone else is still subconscious ego. Being extremely busy and making yourself busy and not having any downtime. And, you know, some people, especially like when I go to gym, and some people go, I could never do a yoga or a balance class because my mind goes too much. It's the egoic mind that's going, and there's resistance to, I don't want to really know what's going on in there. So I'm going to do the full on classes so my mind can't think, like it can't come up. You've got to actually deal with those thoughts because they're still there, regardless of whether you know it or acknowledge it, or if you don't, they're still going to be there. So being really busy actually stops you from getting access to those thoughts. When we're thinking, again, that's the ego protecting you from its own thoughts. Where's those eyes again? Okay, so that's just to name a few, and I hope that's given you a little bit of an insight as to how the subconscious ego controls our life. But as you can see, by having awareness of the behaviours, and I'm going to show you how you can actually deal with your awareness of your behaviours and how you're dealing with things and what to do about it. So the thing is that those are a few insights into behaviours that we have no idea that we're doing, or if we do it, we feel bad, but we can't stop doing it. So I'd like to introduce you to the subconscious ego, and the ego is hiding in the background and controlling things from afar to try and keep you protected. But what I found is that they're just really coping mechanisms that have been developed over time to hide something deeper, which, if we try and focus on the coping mechanism, which, if you think about it, the war on drugs, the war on the world, really, they're focusing. When we focus on the drinking and the drugs and the everything else, nothing actually changes because that's the coping mechanism. We need to look at the core of the problem, which is the subconscious ego is actually the core problem, which is hanging on to stuff from the past and also creating thoughts and beliefs around it, and then literally replaying them day after day after day after day. No wonder why we're tired, right? So as we discussed, our feelings are a great way to locate and find these hidden gems. They are the perfect scenario. Like, if we can really be tuned into our feelings, which again, we're kind of in this society told that it's bad to feel bad. It's actually really good because it's trying to tell you something about the subconscious ego, or something that the ego is actually telling you. So if you have a feeling that suddenly pops up, either via a comment or a situation or whatever, ask yourself, what is the hidden thought creating this? And you should pretty much receive, as soon as you ask yourself that question, you should actually receive it pretty quickly. The other thing I've seen in this work, and this has been very, very interesting, because of course I work with a lot of clients doing this work, is that the ego can say horrible things to us, which we all know, without us realizing those horrible thoughts about, you're not good enough, or you're hopeless, or whatever. So for us to find out what these thoughts are, especially if they're subconscious and we don't know what those thoughts are, it's actually strange, but listening to what other people tell you is actually, they are actually saying to you what your subconscious ego is telling you that you don't know. I've been so surprised. This is what I've found with this work. I've been shown that people are actually the mirror of our own egoic voices on the outside. And it's just fascinating to go deep and watch it. So if I said to someone in a call, because I always know what's going on underneath, I've got that skill to be able to know what the stories are, what the thoughts are, and everything else. But if I said to someone, you're thinking that you're weak or whatever, which is something, again, not most of us want to know that thought about ourselves. And then someone else says on the outside, oh, you're weak and you're hopeless and you have no idea. And the person says to me, I don't know why these people are saying that to me. Now, I know from experience that they're actually just replicating the egoic or subconscious ego that's actually creating those stories within them, which, funnily enough, people are saying directly to them, which I've just been so surprised. So the way I found out that that's what's happening is that when these people come to me and say, I don't understand why these people are saying such horrible things to me, as we go through this, using the feelings and the thoughts that the people get from what people are saying, all of a sudden they actually replicate that exactly what that person told them is exactly what they think about themselves. So I have been really shocked about how crazy that is, because if you think about then the whole concept of bullying and everything else, you know, are people then telling us what the ego is actually telling us already? Like, it's just crazy. So if again someone says something that's not very nice, or again you are triggered by it, you've got to use that feeling to be awake and to notice that they've said something to you, and then start to go down the rabbit hole of, okay, I've got this thought or feeling, and keep going down the rabbit hole of thoughts and feelings, and eventually you'll actually see a corresponding link to your ego actually telling you a similar story to what the other person has actually told you. And this is where the ego, again, is supposed to help you, but in actual fact, it's quite mean sometimes. And especially when it's subconscious, you don't realize that these are the stories or the thoughts that it's telling you. So it's really good to start to see, again, when someone says something horrible to you, you can be excited because it's actually not them saying that to you. They're showing you what your ego is telling you. Again, as we all know, doing the ego work, nothing, if hardly anything, of what the ego says is true. So thank God for that. So when we do things when we're out of control, like I talk about habits and addictions and things like that, we don't realize that we're doing them, but they're just a way of coping with either what's happening now or what happened in the past. Yet our reaction comes from a place that we don't know about. So the subconscious ego is the strongest of them all. It's fiercely protective, and it relies on patterns and consistency to maintain its virtue. So what it means to you is that usually these behaviors occur again and again and again. And because you don't know what is driving it, you feel more and more out of control, thinking that something else is running your life. And we just talked about that before, around having an awareness of, you know, this energy or these thoughts or of people telling us what to do. And it's just the ego, which is then bringing all the years of people telling us what to do, and it sticks to us as this inner thought that continually goes on and on and on, because that it creates that subconscious egoic voice, which we have no idea until we start to really tune into, I'm really not feeling good. Our feelings, again, are really important. I'm not feeling good. I'm feeling heavy. I'm feeling like I have to do all these things. I'm feeling the pressure or whatever. It's because of the subconscious ego. So if you sit with yourself and actually then just say, okay, I'm feeling these things, what are the corresponding thoughts to this feeling? Then you'll start to connect to what the subconscious ego is saying, and you need to look at it. And if it doesn't shift through looking at it and seeing it as a subconscious ego, you do need to call it out as the subconscious ego. So the patterns of behavior, the habits, everything else are just coming from a place of protection and survival. And when we think of it that way, we can start to be a little bit more understanding of the subconscious ego, because when we recognize that it's just trying to help us, we don't make it bad or wrong. We just see it for what it is. It's just doing its job to keep you alive and for survival. So when when really addictions and habits and behaviors turn detrimental or even deadly, the subconscious ego isn't really doing its job. And we have to be aware that this is where we're going, is that in the past it might have helped, but now it's really not doing its job. So we need to wake it up and to show it exactly what it's doing through awareness. So this is the steps, and if you want to get a pen and paper and write down these steps to finding out what is going on in your subconscious ego, the first step is to notice the behavior. Now, as we know, most people aren't even aware of the behavior. If you aren't aware of the behavior, you need to tune into your thoughts. Am I feeling good? Am I not feeling good? You know, all that sort of thing. If you're not feeling good, it means that there's possibly something going on in your subconscious ego that you don't know about. So you just have to notice that there's something going on. The next thing you do, step number 2, is recognize it as coming from a place of protecting you. So when you might have maybe if there's drinking or anger outbursts or something like that, you notice the behavior and then go, well, I'm behaving like that from a place of me needing protection. Can you see how it kind of opens up another channel somewhere within you to say, what am I needing protection from? What is the story that's going on within me saying I need protection? So this is, again, going down the rabbit hole of opening up all these channels and all these doors within yourself, which were previously locked. So then what happens is that once you recognize it's coming from protection, you then go, that's really interesting. Again, it's not right or wrong, good or bad. It's just interesting. Let's go into that. And then tune into, step number 3 is tune into the egoic thoughts that are creating the need for protection. And you will receive, it's like going so deep into yourself. And then once you notice and tune into the egoic thoughts that are creating the behavior, then step number 4 is recognize them as the ego. That's all you need to do. It's just a thought. It's just, it's just the behavior. It's just whatever. And you'll find out why that's really important, as opposed to what we would do before, which was probably berate ourselves for the behavior or the thoughts. And I will say the berating ourselves is still the ego because it's like, well, how dare you do that? So we've got to make sure you don't do that by berating you. Well, no, that doesn't actually work. So it takes a lot of focus, especially with well-hidden egoic thoughts. But you know what? If you tune into your feelings and you really use your feelings, then use those processes, you will get deeper and deeper. But I want to then bring up this last point, which is bad or wrong. And again, so I'm saying berating yourself. And why do we continually do it? So in most cases, when we notice behaviors, oh God, I'm burping, so that's good. It's a good thing. When we notice behaviors, we immediately class them as bad or wrong, either about ourselves or even about other people. Now, this phrase I'm going to tell you, and I've said it before, but I'll say it again, it actually is the phrase that runs the universe, which is what you resist persists. So anything that's bad or wrong, we make it bad or wrong, which creates a level of resistance around it. Now, when you make these things bad or wrong, what actually happens, because bad or wrong is directly linked to the ego, what happens is you make them stronger. And that's why with addiction or habits, we make them bad or wrong and then don't know why they're continuing. It's because we've made them stronger by making them bad or wrong. And it's very simple, very, very simple. Again, you'll go, why do I keep self-sabotaging? Because you make it bad or wrong. Why do I keep getting angry? Because you make it bad or wrong. And it's really interesting watching the ego creating, and even the ego in other people, when people have bad behavior. We make people bad from their bad behavior, but that's actually just from ego, which actually you make them bad, which makes your ego stronger. And then they make themselves bad, which makes their ego stronger. And they will continue that behavior because the subconscious ego will make them. Because you still need to protect the fact that you are bad or wrong from that behavior. And it continues because what you resist persists. So what I was actually showing is the way we deal with criminals in this world is actually, I'm not going to say bad or wrong because that's actually making it bad or wrong, but it's actually not effective. With criminals even, by making them bad or wrong, their behavior is getting worse because they make themselves bad or wrong. And then we really, really solidify it by, putting them in jail or whatever, and you're bad or wrong. And then what happens is they actually then just keep continuing that process. And especially I've noticed, I'll probably get struck down, but in men as well, you watch, and it's actually really interesting to watch if you make a male in particular, who, if you make them bad or wrong, they will instantly get angry. So I've found a lot of men who, even if they do something, or even boys, if they do something and then you say, well, that's not how you do it or whatever, they instantly, their subconscious ego instantly says that's bad or wrong, and they will get angry because that's their way of coping of being bad or wrong. So even just reducing or releasing the way we see things as bad or wrong and just see everything as learning. And what happens is everyone's ego then just disappears, and we can start to act from a place of nurturing and love and growth again, rather than survival, which is bad or wrong. So like most of the rest of the work that we do, awareness is really the key. So looking at the behaviour, understanding it as coming from protection, and you'll understand the ego. So from there, you have a chance of shifting the behaviour from into a soul place of love rather than an egoic place of bad or wrong. So I thought we could just open it up quickly for the next couple of minutes and talk about some examples of either habits or addictions, or even bad or things that we've made bad or wrong, or even awarenesses that we've had around those things, and see how we can use those as examples. So we've got the beautiful Marianne joining me. Hello, gorgeous. So any thoughts or thoughts that came through as I was kind of going through that?
Yes, definitely. Things about I started when I was smoking. I used to smoke to make myself feel more confident and, fit in, and then that went, and then I'd have a drink, and alcohol hits me so quickly.
Yeah.
And I would keep drinking to make me feel more secure.
Yeah, wow. That's great awareness.
And that with me can sometimes only be 2 or 3 drinks.
Yeah.
It hits me really quickly.
So it does its job.
Yeah, it does its job. It makes me feel really good.
Yeah.
But become so aware of it over the last 12 months or so that I cut down. Now and again I'll let go, but I cut down. Cut right down.
Yeah, it's really cool when you notice the behaviour again. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a drink. Again, there's no right or wrong in anything. And again, when we make it wrong, then it becomes, you can see how it becomes like that gnawing dog that you just have to it's like, I don't want it, but yeah, I want it because it's going to make me feel better. And it just, again, when we make it bad or wrong, it actually then builds its power over you. Whereas if you say, I'm just having a drink and it's not a big deal, and not make it bad or wrong, then what happens is you've got the chance of moving out of the behaviour of the habit of it, doing it. But then also it's really interesting when you allow yourself to have the thought of, because I do this with food, having the thought of, because I know I've got a lot of subconscious stuff around food, which I'm still working on, which is really fun to learn so much more about what the thoughts are around the cravings, or and for me, I know mine is if I see something, then I want it. So even noticing that that's the behavior, and then saying, okay, so when I see something, I've really got to look at what the next thought is after I see it. So for you could be, okay, so I have an awareness that I want a drink, or I need a drink, or anything. And then you can go, okay, this is interesting. And it's kind of tricky, but when you don't do the behavior and just see what happens within you, it's actually really interesting. So you don't have the drink, or you don't have the food or whatever, and you just sit with yourself and watch the stories. So it's really interesting. So say, for example, I might have, and you can relate this back to drinking or whatever, I'll use myself as an example, but you might say, okay, well, I might say, I'm not hungry or anything, but then all of a sudden I'll see, I don't know, chocolate muffin in the cupboard, right? What's my voice doing? Can you see how the body reacts? Because I'm actually doing the work. I'm actually losing my voice. Again, that's the ego. Let me see if once I call the ego out around it not letting me speak it.
Because it wants the muffin.
It wants the muffin. Okay, so look, my voice is back now once I've actually recognised that it's the ego saying that it wants the muffin. How funny is that?
Ah, okay.
So as when you recognise, and so then what you do is you actually look at, okay, so the ego is actually saying it wants the muffin. It's not me. It's not me. It's the ego that wants the muffin. Ego, why do you want the muffin? Like, and it's like, what thought is there? What is the thought? And it might be, it's going to make you feel better. That's the next, because I'm going through it now. So okay, so the ego is saying it's going to make you feel better. So it's like tricky. It's like, I'm going to tell you it's going to make you feel better, and you'll go, okay, I'm going to feel better, so I'm going to eat that, or I'm going to drink that, or I'm going to do that because I'm going to feel better. But then we've got to recognize that's the ego still. So then we've got to go deeper and go, but the ego, you're actually saying that that's going to make me feel better. But from experience, actually, I don't feel good afterwards. Can you see how then you go into complete awareness? If I eat that, I know that I actually won't feel better afterwards, regardless of you telling me that I will. And you then just take it out as, and this is actually the first time I've just seen that for myself, is seeing that usually when I eat something that the ego tells me to eat, I do always feel bad afterwards, whether it's an emotional feeling bad or whether it's a physical, which is usually a physical feeling bad. So now I'm going to be more aware that when I have the ego going, oh, that looks nice, even though I know that I don't normally eat it, or I don't normally want it, I know it makes me feel bad. See, that's this subconscious ego. I know, I have a knowing that that actually makes me feel bad, like physically feel bad if I eat it. Yet the ego is tricking me into thinking I'll feel good. But it never is actually, in reality, it never is the case. So it's actually funny is that when you actually look at the ego, the stories that the ego tells you is actually not true. And then you come back to what is true, which is this inner truth, which you'll then live from that truth. So say, for example, just have a drink, you'll feel better. You'll then go and sit with it and see what else it brings up. It might, I don't know, I'm not going to give you any words of what it's going to bring up, but it'll bring up deeper thoughts around what it's going to do as its job. And you just have to keep looking at them. Oh, right. Okay. So that's what you think. Okay. The more you look at what the ego is saying, the more this soul voice and the truth will come up, and all of a sudden it'll override it and go, actually, we're going to feel like crap tomorrow morning. I'm going to probably feel bad because I don't know when to stop, or I'm going to have too much, and then I'm probably not going to be great behavior, like when I'm off my face. And so what'll happen, you still got to be really careful that you don't make that bad or wrong, the things that happen or whatever. And it's just seeing it, when you see it from a place of kindness and that it was just for coping, you can be nice to yourself. And just know that you were just doing what you thought was, again, the right thing. But in actual fact, it was just listening to the ego, which thought that, and the ego is very short-lived. It's like, it's a quick fix. It's like, you'll feel better now. And just for that first second, you will feel better for a second, but long-standing, you don't actually feel better. And it's with anything which is a subconscious egoic thought or belief or anything like that. So it's really fun. So if you can practice this, that will be really good.
I will.
Yeah.
That's an answer to it.
Yeah. I've actually found and you've got to have the awareness not to do it, because it's actually really hard to even have the awareness not to do it because it's so subconscious. All of a sudden you're going and grabbing the bottle, and all of a sudden you're going to grab the muffin and you're eating it, and then you go, how did that happen? Subconscious. So it's really hard. It's really hard to grab the awareness that you're going to do it. But if you can grab it before you do it, you'll then have a chance of actually looking at it and being able to find out what's driving it underneath. So I really love your awareness around the drinking actually helps you feel more secure. So then that's actually telling you already that your ego is carrying a story about you not being safe or secure. So then that's a bit more of an insight that you can use next time when you sit there and you don't allow yourself to be taken by the craving or the habit or the addiction or whatever it is that anyone's got. You think it's going to feel really bad, but it doesn't actually happen when you sit there and do it. So you think, oh, if I don't have that coffee, or if I don't have that drink, or if I don't have that whatever, I'm going to feel really bad. But when you sit there and really tune into yourself, the cravings go.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. So practice that.
I will.
Yay. Any other questions about any of this or anything?
No, that's given me a lot to work on.
Perfect. And I'm going to keep running regular weekly and monthly classes, so just keep an eye out for them, and I'll just keep talking about all of this stuff and sharing. You can see there's so much you can actually talk about around this. Very cool. Yay. Well, thank you, Marianne, and thank you everyone for joining me on this 4 days. As I said, I'm going to continue sharing. I'll be sharing with everyone who's signed up all the videos and all the calls and everything else that you can participate in, and I'll let you know when I'm doing them. But thank you for doing this with me.
Take care.
Take care. See you guys. Bye.